Guys, this session is totally different to anything you've seen before. Just see if I can share my screen. Great. So this session is very, very different from what you've seen before. As I mentioned, in this session, we're going to be talking about how we can utilize the Power Platform to automate dating, especially automate dating with one particular platform, Tinder. Okay, any questions, comments, please leave it in the chat. I will read them after and try to respond to as many questions as possible. So please interact. Okay, so let's start off with just a little bit about me, although you've heard about me before, so I won't take long on this. I have over 10 years of experience. I am currently a business applications MVP. I currently work at Avanade. These are my social details. So if you'd like to reach out to me on Twitter or actually comment on the session, feel free to hashtag for the conference and also tweet at me. I do blog a lot about customer service and Azure DevOps. And of course, you can actually connect with me on LinkedIn. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight into the session, starting off in a very story format of the history of dating and why I actually thought it would be a good idea in the first place to try to automate the dating process and also create like a hook into Tinder. So let's start off with dating started. In the past, of course, we had courtship, and courtship was a very public affair. I mean, it was something that happened in the outskirts of society, and it was kind of intentions were fairly obvious because men would call upon ladies that they were serious about in front of the families. So it kind of provided a safety net for women against what you would call rogues, to ensure that their intentions were honorable. Now, you would have had your rogues, but in large part, it was, fairly few, because any scandalous behavior would actually deem you an outcast from society. So you actually have to stick to society's rules because everything was public. Now, this experience with courtship was extremely important, of course, because back in that day, like the experience for a woman was really, really tied towards the relationship that woman had with a man in terms of having a father, having a husband. It was a very patriarchal society. So it was very important for a woman to actually have that association to a man because she did not have her own independence. Now, let's double into the turn of the 20th century and women's lib. Now, in the turn of the 20th century, in the era of women's lib, this really coincided with the popularity of cars. And of course, unfortunately, the war. So a couple of things happened here. Because of the war, there weren't that many men. Women gained more independence. Of course, then with cars, again, more independence as well. So with this, you can actually turn away from that public dating that we had in the past to more one-on-one dating. But what these two things have in common in terms of what happened with courtship and what happens with dating during the women's lib era is that you're still dating in and around your own region where you are. You can't actually date someone, say, for example, in the US or in India, if you are based in the UK, because you don't know them, right? You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what life is like. So with the advent of women's lib and the ability to go out one-on-one, unchaperoned, it changed the dating landscape, right? And then it basically allowed the term dating to be coined, where a woman basically told a gentleman, this is a true story, that all the other gents are filling up my dates. So that's actually where the term date comes from, okay? And then if we basically move on a little bit more in time, we have the advent of the internet. So with the internet now, with the first computer-based dating. And this actually came about by two Harvard alumni that actually created a questionnaire, a dating questionnaire using an IBM computer. And they basically allowed everyone to pay $3, which at the time was a lot of money, to basically fill out this questionnaire. They would pop it into the computer and the computer would come up with their perfect match. So this is actually the first documented sign of actual computer-based dating. But it's actually interesting because, again, it really is down to whoever is actually in your local region. So again, it's talking about shared experiences, and you know these people, and the likeliness is that you will actually have people that are in common in that time as well. And of course, here you can actually go unchaperoned, one-on-one, but now it's just much easier, right? So let's fast forward on to current times. So if we look at the emergence of social media and the impact of dating, where dating is now based on people, which is just a click away, then you can actually see how we've progressed away from the chaperone type of dating, where everything was, out in public. You had less rogues, you had people who were well-intentioned, to people doing one-on-one dating, to people who could date multiple people at once. And now with social media, people didn't have to, be who they say they are. So online dating in the first onset is really where the first origins of this came about. Now, online dating, when it first came about, wasn't actually that popular for the general masses because it obviously had a taboo about it. It was still thought of as, you should date one-on-one and you should have met that person. And online dating, of course, you're meeting a stranger, which is not what dating, according to society, was all about. And so social media changed all this because now you can actually have a glimpse into someone's life and actually feel like you knew that person, which basically changed the perception of online dating to be taboo to now being acceptable. And then, of course, we move away towards dating apps. Now, dating apps, of course, provides that opportunity to meet more people, to meet people that you never would have had the chance to meet in the past. Especially especially when we look at how we dated in the past, with the questionnaires, with the chaperones, or even with the women's lib movement. So we have now the ability to pretty much with a phone actually interact with multiple hundreds of people. And with dating apps, this is pretty much where the gamification of dating really started. And when they talk about gamification, I think Will Dorrington has this really brilliant session about gamification and its effects, where it basically ties you into using it more and more and more. And bear in mind, the whole point of dating is ultimately, well, according to society, to find someone who you can spend the rest of your life with. Now, if you're gamifying it or gamifying it, then that no longer becomes your end goal. It becomes a possible outcome, but it's no longer the point. So you're never really gonna find someone, or it reduces the chances or likeliness of that happening because you're constantly, swiping left, swiping right. Now, there's so many different types of dating applications. And so if we have, for example, Tinder, which is actually the most popular dating app out there, I believe. And this is pretty much where you're able to swipe according to how you're interested in someone. So you swipe, I think, left for no and right for yes. And you actually have a look at the person's pictures, their profile, and you actually see what they're interested in terms of Spotify, which is like a music service, or even their Instagram, which is another app that allows you to see pictures and stuff according to what their interests are and what they're like. You've got Bumble, you've got Match, you've got so many dating apps, right? Now, the point of that, though, is that with all these dating apps, it's great because you can meet so many people, but they have challenges. And these challenges are pretty much what led me to think, okay, That's great. We need to do something about it. But what are these challenges? The challenges that, well, I came to face were catfishing, players, and time wasters. Catfishes, aka people who really aren't who they say they are. Who are you really talking to? For all you know, it could actually be, you think you're talking to a woman, you're really talking to a man. You think you're talking to a man, you're really talking to a woman, etc. You also have the concept of players, where literally they are not really there for what they say they are. They say, I want a serious relationship, but really what they're after is something a lot more casual than what you might want. And then you've also got your time wasters, who are just really there for company. Now, I'm there for company too, but they're not really being honest. So these are some of the challenges that as a woman or even as a man, you'll probably face on these dating apps or these websites. So what does this have to do with the Power Platform, and why am I talking so much about dating? Well, that was my intro. This is basically where we get to the good stuff. I basically created a solution for this. Now, I thought it would be really good to create a Power app that will allow me to see who's actually out there, pull all the profiles into this Power app that will allow me to bulk swipe according to my preferences, right? And of course, I'm a woman. A lot of women have their lists, And if you basically find a woman that says, I don't have a list, that's probably not true. Many women have lists in terms of what they're actually looking for and what they're not looking for. So what I did was I used the Power Platform to create that list of what I'm not looking for, so I can use Power App along with Power Automate to then actually display who I would need to swipe left to according to my preferences and what I've actually put in my list of notes. And then use Power BI to actually understand who exactly is my actual type. Because of course, as I'm swiping yes or no, I'm actually building up a data set of people that I have come across with. Because in the Power app, of course, you've got the list, I'm swiping, and then as I'm swiping, then I am basically saving information, not their personal information, but just information about them. For example, utilizing the Face API to get their facial characteristics. Are they blonde? Are they bald? Are they do they have mustaches, sideburns, etc.? I'm saving all this information into Dataverse. So we can utilize that information to generate analytics to understand who I am actually more, saying yes and no to, who I'm actually attracted to. Because I will be honest with you, I gained some insights that I did not know, So now I actually understand my preferences and who I actually will deviate to a lot more. And then we can also utilize Power Virtual Agent to kind of validate my choice. So for example, automating the first message. So I can ensure that this person is one, not a bot, although that is a bot, but make sure that they're not a bot, but also to ensure that they will respond. Because another outcome of Tinder and these dating apps is that a lot of people will ghost you. So you'll basically send a message and they will never respond. So we can remove those matches automatically, which is great. Another thing that we did with the Power app that I'm going to show is being able to predict your choices based on your historical choices. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pop into my app now, and we're going to basically display what that actually looks like. And yeah, I'm going to show you how I set it all up and what the different pieces of those components are. So let us start off with the app itself. Now, this is my app. Bear in mind, it is not complete. I am not a designer. I've had people that are basically helping me design the look and feel of the app. I'm really good with functionality, just not look and feel. Okay, so we're going to start off with the actual profile. Okay, so Tinder, just so you know, has an off key that it will provide that's valid for 24 hours at a time. So I'm just gonna basically say, give me here. And what this is doing is this is pulling in from Tinder, and it's going to not only pull in from Tinder, as you can see, it's getting the job title, their bios, the ages, etc., and their pictures. All this, by the way, is public information being pulled from the Tinder API. So for some reason it's just there. So yeah, we're gonna use it. It's also going to look through Dataverse to identify keywords that I am saying no to. Because of course, what I would have had to do if I were actually on the app is read all this, go through the pictures, and actually have to swipe yes and no. It's very time consuming, and I'd rather not. So this basically allows me to automate a lot of that. So here you can see the red flags, which are dynamically being displayed according to keywords. One of those keywords, you might actually question it. It's fun. And the reason I made a keyword of fun is because a lot of people take fun, basically say fun, but they don't mean fun in a ha-ha way. They mean like to have fun, which I am not here for. So I basically flagged it. So yeah, so basically it's just going through all the bios to identify which one I'm not going to say yes to. Another thing that it's flagging is keywords for dad, kid, wife, I'm married, things like that. And then it basically flags it. So I can basically just bulk say no. So this is pretty much me live Kindering on a CSharpCorner session, which is very interesting to me. Okay, so what this is going to do is this is going to send this all to Dataverse, and this is also going to update Tinder to say, no, I do not want these people. Okay. The other thing, though, that of course we can do is we can predict who I'm actually going to like. So if I can click on predict here, what this is doing is this is now leveraging Power Automate to utilize a AI model that I created based on historical data of my past likes and dislikes. And of course, we've got their facial analytics, we've got their job titles, we've got their bios, we've got their ages, we've got a lot of information that we can use to understand what my preferences are. So I'm utilizing AI Builder to kind of help with that. AI Builder and Power Automate is now going to display red for those that I don't want to say yes to, and white for those that I do. Now, bear in mind, this is Tinder, and Tinder does not have a good data set in terms of me, for my personal taste for dating. So a lot of this will come back red, if not probably all. It should, because from what I'm seeing, there is no one that I would actually be interested in. So I would be surprised if it came back with anything. Yeah, okay, so I will say this worked, and yeah, I would actually say no to all of them. So pretty much that is the actual app itself. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the analytics of it all. So here we have the Power BI dashboard, or Power BI tiles rather, that I've embedded within my app, just to get some understanding as to, you know, what I'm saying yes and no to. And then we're also going to go in to Power BI so we can drill in a little bit more. So I just wanted to see, you can actually see the job titles that actually use Tinder, or that I'm actually getting presented with a lot. The hair colors, the matches, there's so many other information and so many other things that we could show. So here we have it in a full, you know, Power BI landscape. But what I also wanted to show is actually something that surprised even me. Because if I basically say, okay, this is the data, this is how many true matches I have, you can actually see that I actually prefer people with brown hair, which I did not know. No, it's bald and black, actually. I didn't know that I liked people that were bald or with black hair. I would have always assumed that it was brown, but that surprised me. And then also you can actually see the job titles that I'm actually veering toward, being like engineer, which is apparently the biggest one, software director, IT. So apparently that is probably where I need to focus my attentions on when dating. Software engineers, IT director. Yeah, I've learned from that. Okay, so then the last thing is actually Power Virtual Agent, but that is something that is still in progress. What I've got it to do so far is actually send a message. I'm actually working on being able to receive the message back. So that is something that I'm going to be blogging about and sharing later on. Now, let's see how I actually set it all up. So I've got Tinder here. And when you actually call Tinder, what actually happens in the background, of course, you can use DevTools. You can actually look at the network traffic. And if you didn't know, Tinder, of course, is an app, but it also has a website. So when you go onto the website, you've actually, you can track the call to the web service. And you can actually then look at the network tab and actually see what APIs are actually being called. So here you can actually see that the URL that's being called is, it ends with core, and basically utilize this, pop it into, what would you call it? Pop it into Postman and replicate the service. So you've got the path that you need to call, you've got the header that you need to call, and then of course you can see here that every single call it's making, it's using this auth token. So you can utilize that auth token and actually just replicate the service call. So I have this service call here. So if I bring this up in my Postman client, you can see here, that's exactly what I did. I took the web service I took the API and I took the necessary action. I then popped in the auth token, which is the exact key that it's needed. And then when you press go, you actually get the response. Now, if you're familiar with Power Automate allows you to do two things. It has an HTTP connector where you don't actually need to go out and build your own repeatable solution. For example, a custom connector is a repeatable wrapper that allows you to reuse the same web service calls by just putting in that, for example, different security authentications, etc. Or you can just use HTTP. Now, what I did was I actually built a custom connector for the Tinder API. And when I did that then allowed me to basically pull that information into Power Automate. So, for example, if I pull this here, sorry, 1 second. I need to... 1 second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to populate this so you can actually see what's happening. Yeah. So when I actually then make the call in Power Apps, what's happening is it's then basically making that call, the same call that we had in Postman, through the custom connector and populating the collection. So here you can actually see that I've got a variety of collections. The one that's being populated is the user profiles, right? And within the user profiles, of course, you have all the information, including the additional details of the user. You can also see if they have Spotify, Facebook, what type of user they are, if it's a dead account or if it's actually active, all this information. If they've actually enabled SuperLike, which is basically a paid-for service by Tinder. You also can then pull in, so the other calls are being made, of course, is the call to my Dataverse. The Dataverse is basically showcasing what keywords to look out for, and then it's basically sending it to this collection as well. And of course, the facial attributes, that's also another collection that's going to be populated as well. So that this collection is basically populated from another call that is also being triggered through Power Automate. Okay, so if I actually go into each of those Power Automate functions, if it lets me. Yeah, perfect. So here what we're doing is we're analyzing the user bio. So bear in mind where we went from was we had a look in Tinder. We took the API, the calls that Tinder were making, and we created our own Postman collection. We took that collection and we created a custom connector in Power Automate using that collection. Okay, then we're able to pop that into Power App to populate a gallery, and also as a part of that population, as a part of that that formula, we're also calling 2 additional flows or Power Automate flows, cloud flows. One which is populating the red flags. So it's basically populating a collection of red flags. Okay. So here you can actually see that we're utilizing the relevant connectors. It's basically what I'm trying to showcase here is that utilizing the Power Platform, we're just basically pulling in and pulling the components together. Okay, so the next thing that we also then did was we leveraged the HTTP connector, which is how we got the Face API. Because of course the Face API actually also has a standalone connector, but I really just wanted to showcase, you know, what was possible using the different types: custom connector, standard connector, or HTTP, and we're able to do all of those. Okay, cool. So the next thing that I actually want to showcase as well is, one second, my laptop is now going a bit slower than normal, so apologies for this. Trying to click on that. So the last thing that we did was, of course, we showcased the prediction of what I'm actually going to like. And this prediction is basically using that model that is pulling in from my historical preferences, the model that I actually built, and then basically just sending back the prediction and the percentage likeliness of me predicting, of the value of me predicting it. So if I actually click on this as well, great. So here you can actually see the prediction score, the likeliness value, as well as the user ID applicable. Okay. And the last thing that I actually want to show here is, apologies for this, one sec. Okay, so the last thing I actually want to show here, of course, this is my list of absolute no's. So you can actually see what are my absolute no's. And these are things that actually, yes, do get populated, and people put this in their bios. I'm like, no. So here you can actually see the model that I've actually built. And with the model, bear in mind, you have to have a certain amount of data in order to properly train your model. And this model is basically just a quick way, without needing to know a lot of things about machine learning and as your machine learning studio, you can actually create your own model that actually is a local way of interacting with that service. You don't need to be a data scientist. Okay, so I have been able to create this, and what it does is it basically utilizes particular fields that I've basically given it. So it uses the data, the relationships, and you basically specify what you want to add as an input, and it understands, it learns from that, and then it trains the model several times. And basically, the more the model is trained and the more data is provided, is the more accurate it's going to be. As you can see, it's not the most accurate model, but it is trained daily. And because it's trained daily based on more accurate information, then the best model could actually So because it's trained daily, then it could actually likely increase. So I think yesterday it was actually at C, and I didn't publish, and I should have. But you can also see what data is actually influencing the scores that it comes up with. So what data is actually being influenced? If you're a Power BI person, it's like using key influencer. What's the influence of the data? Okay, cool. So I just want to basically go back briefly to my presentation. If my laptop will let me, because it's so slow. Okay, so 1 second. Great. Apologies for this. My presentation just closed. So I'm just going to basically finish the presentation whilst I reopen it. So basically what I just showed was pretty much 4 main key things I want you to take away from this. One of which is data. Now, bear in mind, this is not possible without data. We're using Tinder's data, but what data do you have in your orbit? And if you want to play around with the Power Platform, if you're just getting to know the Power Platform, then to be honest, the best way of learning it is actually to do it using to utilize a scenario that you're actually interested in. As I mentioned at the start, my point was really just to see what was possible with what was out there at the time, where I was like, trying to see what apps were out there. And I found this one and I basically worked with it and I expanded upon it utilizing the Power Platform. You can actually find data, you can find a scenario, and you can build on that using different solutions and different components. And the thing is, sorry about this. And because the solution is actually, because the Power Platform is very modularized and it is a tool, you're able to utilize that tool to pretty much make do with what you want it to do. You're basically the master of the Power Platform. Okay, so 1 second. Apologies. For some reason, my laptop is really having it today, which is not ideal. Okay, 1 second. Okay, the next thing that I want you to take away is the use of a custom connector. Now, you've got the use of a custom connector, of course, because you might have, for example, a system that is on-premise and you can't actually interact with on-premise systems without a custom connector. Yes, so you can actually totally do that. The easiest way that I have found personally is to ensure that it works using Postman and then pull that in. Now, there is a change in Postman where it has been upgraded and it is no longer possible to export that collection. That is something that is being worked on by the product team, I believe, and that should hopefully be possible again. But if you do have a previous version of Postman, then it is still possible. You also have to consider, so it was data, it was then the custom connector, and then also understanding what the differences are between the custom connector and HTTP. The answer is not much. These are just different ways of actually calling the web service. It's really up to you and your situation and your use case as to when you use which. And the next thing that I actually wanted to cover was the AI Builder. So AI Builder has so many different opportunities for you to actually leverage and use the data. So for example, being able to take a picture of a page and transcribe that digitally onto, into text, into CE, or being able to analyze, for example, I did it for, am I going to say yes, swipe yes or no? But you can also do it to actually understand, is this project likely to be late or not in terms of a project situation? Okay, and then of course you also have the ability to transcribe from to translate languages utilizing Azure Cognitive Services, which again, these are all different possibilities using Azure Cognitive Services and AI Builder. Now I think the last thing that I was going to talk about, if my slides hadn't totally crashed, was, did it actually work? And the answer to that is, in a way it did, because through the course of actually creating this, this solution, I was able to meet some really amazing and awesome people. And I got flowers for Valentine's Day, which was like really happy for me. But yeah, no, I am still, you know, totally like, don't have a boyfriend, but that's fine, because you know the point was really learning and automating the dating process, which in a way I am on my way to doing. So that worked, but it did not work to find me a boyfriend. So yes and no. The last thing I want to do is really put some thanks out there. I want to really thank Keith Watling and Yosh and Samia for actually supporting the app as testers, as idea generators, and also Dave Bostock as well, and for trying to help me beautify this app, which hopefully will be beautified soon. Now, the last slide that I would have had is pretty much the end slide, which is basically where I say thank you so much for joining my session today, which I assure you is a totally off the cuff session, not like any that I've done before, but yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed it.